Welcome back to The Explainer. So, in our previous deep dives into the Jio Platforms DRHP, we spent a ton of time looking at the telecom network, right? The sheer scale of that connectivity engine is massive. But today we're looking way past the network. We're going to examine the intricate, massive distribution ecosystem powering Jio. The big question is, does this entire ecosystem create a competitive wall that rivals just literally can't climb? Let's find out. Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is a distribution moat? Well, in the investing world, you know a moat protects your castle, right? But a distribution moat is a structural competitive advantage that comes from a company's unparalleled ability to reach, acquire, and serve a massive customer base incredibly efficiently. It's not just about having a great product, it's about actually owning the roads that carry that product straight to the consumer. Honestly, it's the hidden engine of modern business success. Which brings us to the central question for any investor reading this DRHP. Is Jio's primary advantage just its massive 4G and 5G network? Or does the wider Reliance ecosystem create a truly powerful distribution mode? While the physical network is absolutely the foundation, no doubt about it, we really need to ask if the surrounding ecosystem, the retail stores, the apps, the devices, if that is actually the real competitive wall keeping rivals at bay. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we just define the moat, so next we're going to look at the physical distribution engine and then the digital gateway. After that, we'll map out the ecosystem flywheel, weigh the advantages against the dependencies, and finally, get to our final verdict. Let's get moving. All right, section 2, the physical distribution engine, building from the ground up. To really understand this moat, we have to step out of the cloud for a second and into the physical world to look at the hard DRHP facts about Jio's on-the-ground infrastructure. Right in the DHRP, it states that as of March 31st, 2020, Jio operated exactly 1,059 Jio Centres. Now, these aren't just your standard storefronts. The document outlines that these act as absolutely crucial administrative back offices. Think of them as the regional brain centers. They house field operations, workforce management, training facilities, and they hold all the inventory and installation kits for that critical last-mile work. But the reach goes much, much deeper than that. As of that exact same date, Jio operated 6,323 Jio Points. That's a massive scale. These are hyper-local physical touchpoints located out in smaller towns and rural markets. They manage the sales and distribution for different districts, essentially bringing the network right to the consumer's doorstep, way out beyond the major cities. Now, what's really interesting about this setup is how these two physical layers work together in perfect tandem. The Jio Centers act as the larger urban administrative hubs, right? While the Jio Points serve as these hyper-local rural tentacles. And those Jio Points report straight up to the regional Jio Centers. It's a highly decentralized pan-India physical footprint, and it allows them to roll out new initiatives simultaneously, practically everywhere with very minimal bottlenecks. But here's the real kicker for physical distribution. The DRHP reveals that Jio leverages a master distribution agreement with Reliance Retail. So what does that mean for us? It means Jio uses the vast existing pan-India retail network of its sister company to distribute its telecom services. Reliance Retail handles the customer acquisition, the KYC, and the payment collections. Jio essentially bypassed the need to build a massive retail empire from scratch just by plugging directly into an existing one. Moving to section 3, the digital gateway, from physical to digital. Physical reach is incredible, for sure, but physical stores do eventually hit a scaling limit. Digital access points, however, those scale infinitely. Let's shift our focus from the physical stores over to this digital doorway. And the DRHP reveals a truly staggering number here. The MyJio app had 215.9 million average monthly active users in fiscal 2020. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. That is an enormous base of users actively engaging with a single digital interface every single month. It creates a massive, massive pipeline for digital distribution. And the setup of this app brilliantly illustrates how it acts as a unified digital doorway. It's not just a place to pay your phone bill. As the DRHP outlines, from this single access point, users can jump into shopping through JioMart, financial services via Jio Finance, or entertainment through Jio TV and Jio Cloud. It essentially bundles an entire digital life into a single, highly accessible ecosystem. To expand this digital access even further and really strip away any friction, Jio has built out several key channels disclosed in the DRHP. We've got the MyJio app, sure, but they also use the Hello Jio voice assistant, which operates in 12 different Indian languages, and an interactive voice response system in 14 languages.
Plus, for the home, the Jio Set-Top Box and Jio TeleOS act as the primary digital distribution point for TV, cloud computing, and gaming. It's all about making discovery and self-service as effortless as humanly possible. All right, Section 4, the Ecosystem Flywheel, an analytical framework. Up to now, we've been looking at raw DHRP facts, the physical centers, the app users, the languages. Now I want to explicitly shift our lens to an analytical interpretation of how these facts actually interact to create economic momentum. So let's walk through this analytical flywheel together. First, that massive physical and digital distribution reach makes customer acquisition incredibly efficient. Second, once those customers are acquired, they are funneled straight into digital services through the MyJio app or the set-top box. Third, high engagement with those services creates massive scale. And finally, that scale drives undeniable revenue opportunities, which attracts more third-party partnerships, and boom, it feeds right back into step 1.
And we absolutely can't forget the role of hardware here, which we covered deeply in previous episodes. Products like the affordable JioBharat phone and the set-top box act as the essential bridge in all of this. They are literally the physical keys that unlock that digital doorway, channeling consumers directly from a physical retail purchase right into that digital ecosystem flywheel we just talked about.
Next up, Section 5, Advantage versus Dependency, the important duality. If you recall, back in Series 3 of our explainers, we looked really closely at the risks, essentially the floor, of relying so heavily on the Reliance ecosystem. Well, today, we are assessing the exact same dynamic, but looking at this ceiling. How those exact same dependencies might actually act as a ceiling-raising competitive advantage. So the crucial point is this duality right here. On the advantage side, leaning on Reliance Retail gives Jio unmatched scale, immediate wide reach, and highly efficient customer acquisition. But on the dependency side, the DRHP clearly states that 77.08% of Jio's prepaid connectivity revenue for fiscal 2020 was driven through that Reliance Retail channel. Relying that heavily on a sister company is a huge structural risk, yes, but it also gives them a head start that is incredibly hard for any competitor to beat. Analytically speaking, we really have to ask, can competitors easily replicate this model? Honestly, the barriers are immense. Replicating this would require massive scale, deep integration across retail, telecom, and media, incredibly high capital expenditure, and a physical rural reach that literally took years to build. The sheer execution complexity of harmonizing over 7,000 physical touchpoints with an app serving hundreds of millions of users, it's staggering. And, it's worth noting that managing this ecosystem comes with its own intense constraints around execution costs, regulation, and heavy channel dependence for Jio. And that brings us to Section 6, the final verdict, what the DRHP actually says. As we wrap up this explainer, we need to draw a very hard line between what the DRHP document explicitly proves as a fact and what the wider market analytically suggests. Let's meticulously separate them out here. First, looking at the proven side, we have the cold, hard DRHP facts. Jio operates 1,059 centers and 6,323 points. It relies heavily on the Reliance Retail distribution agreement, and it has 215.9 million MyJio app users. Now, shifting to what that implies, we have our analytical interpretations. These facts suggest a massive barrier to entry, highly integrated ecosystem economics, and incredibly powerful cross-selling potential. Remember, the facts are the foundation, the interpretation is the investment thesis. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to weigh as you consider all the evidence we presented today. Taking into account the thousands of physical centers, the hundreds of millions of digital app users, and that deep integration with the wider Reliance empire, does Jio's wider ecosystem create a genuine distribution moat? I'll let you be the judge. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the data as you form your own verdict. Catch you next time.